last year, JJ and I filmed a Leeuwin Art Series vertical tasting from 2001 through to 2018, which at the time had just been released. Since then, the 2019 has been released, and what it really does show is the absolute ironclad consistency of the Leeuwin Art Series style, regardless of vintage. And what we see is consistent quality across the years with the imprint of the seasons on each wine. So I hope that you enjoy the video. I'm sorry that I didn't release it before now. And if you've got a glass of Art Series Chardonnay in front of you, all the better. Hi, I'm Erin Larkin and I'm here with John Jens, and today we're doing something pretty special. We always do things special, I think. But we're doing the Leeuwin... Every day, but every tasting too. The Leeuwin Estate Art Series Chardonnay from 2018 to 2001. We get the opportunity to do this every year, very, very fortunately, at Leeuwin with the winemakers and often Simone and or Justin. And the idea being for us to understand the evolution and context of the vintages that make up the Art Series Chardonnay collection. So here we're spanning 2 decades, and we're looking at very, very different winemaking styles and vintage variation, which is evident in each of these wines. So John, do what I know you want to do so very badly and put Leeuwin Estate Art Series Chardonnay in context, please.
Dun, 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 dun. Erin can't do a fanfare. I've got to do it for myself. Okay, so the deal for me is, firstly, Erin and I live in Western Australia. I don't think the people in the eastern states realise really what's going on in the West in terms of Chardonnays, and to use your own judges and your own wine writers as an example. The wine show system, the capital city wine show system, says that, and remember, of that, there's probably 250, 280 judges, of which only perhaps 15 or 16 are from Western Australia. And remember that Margaret River has about 1.5% of Australia's Chardonnay fruit. In 2016, Margaret River picked up 5 of the 7 capital city wine show trophies for Chardonnays. In 2017, they picked up 5 of the 6 from 1.5% and with Eastern States judges. 2018, they only picked up 2, and in 2019, 5 of 7 again. Because of COVID, in 2019, there were only 2 capital city wine shows. Western Australia got them both. So the point that I'm trying to make is, also from a parochial point of view, I want you to understand, but that Western Australia, and that by that I mean Margaret River, has picked up 17 of the 30 past capital city Chardonnay best trophies from 1.5%, from Margaret River's 1.5% of Australia's Chardonnay fruit. Truly extraordinary. Now within that, as with the East, the greatest producers in the East don't enter the show system. Over in the West, the greatest producers don't enter the show system. So Leeuwin Estate is beyond that. In the discussions that Erin and I have had in the past, wines like Giaconda, wines like the Penfolds Gitana and Benet, wines like Cullen's, wines like Pierrot, and wines like Leeuwin Estate have been amongst Australia's greatest. And today we're with Leeuwin Estate. Leeuwin Estate, when the first great Australian Chardonnay, to my mind, was the 1978 Petaluma from the Cara Vineyards, made by the great Brian Crozer. The next great one was the Leeuwin 1980, which everyone's forgotten. 81 was a superstar. Everyone's forgotten it. They remember the 82. They remember the great 87, the year following Erin's birth year. And I would suggest, with respect, and also with James Halliday's thoughts in mind, James Halliday's points in mind, that Western Australia, that's wrong, that Leeuwin Estate have produced probably 3 of the great 6 Australian Chardonnays yet made, perhaps 5 of the great 10 and 10 of the great 20. I looked at, I've been back through Halliday's wine annuals, wine companions, because you can't get the information off the website. And since 2002, in 9 of the vintages, the Leeuwin Estate Art Series Chardonnay is either the highest pointed wine, and in more recent years, wine of the year in some instances, or equal highest pointed wine. in 9 of about 18 or 19 vintages. I think I was missing 1 or 2 books. It's quite extraordinary. There is no other winery in the country with Chardonnay that does anything like that. And now we're looking at a cross-section of 6. Erin, Australian wine has never been better. These typify that. The older ones are magnificent, just wonderful drinking, or needing a touch more time, but still great length and great wines. The more recent ones, truly extraordinary. Australia, and whether it's Western Australia or the Eastern States, has never seen so much good wine. These are amongst the greatest Chardonnays this country's ever seen, in my book.
They're astoundingly good, and we're going to start with possibly their best ever, I would suggest. I think we should start young.
Whoa, okay.
I know.
I'll do whatever you want.
But when we go down to
There's been a fall at the 5th.
Sorry. But when we are doing this tasting down at the winery, we usually look at 10 or 12 vintages of Art Series Chardonnay side by side, and we've always started at the youngest wine first. So I believe we should do that again today, which is interesting because we're starting in the 2018. It's only just been released at the beginning of March 2020.
So 3 weeks ago.
Okay. 2018 was Margaret River's greatest vintage ever. And that is being proven time and time again by each of the great houses in the region. When you look at 17, 18 and 19, whatever other vintages side by side, the 18s clearly stand on the shoulders of those in terms of power, grace, length of flavour, restraint, balance and ripeness. They are exceptional wines. If you are not collecting the 18s from Margaret River, you're making a grave error. They are unbelievable, really. They are beyond hyperbole. They are incredible. So we're going to start with the 18 Art Series Chardonnay. And I just want to tell you that I interviewed Hutchie and Tim, the 2 winemakers, this time last year, effectively, and we looked at the 18 Art Series Chardonnay in barrel. Now, I did a very long interview with the pair of them, but we get right into the nitty-gritty.
2 weeks. Just kidding.
Exciting. So we got into the nitty-gritty of barrel selection, vineyard selection, picking times, bunch weight, everything that every nerd on the planet would like to know about. So if you're interested in that video, I'm going to include the link, or at least details of it, in the notes below. But that will be released possibly a week after this video. And so if you're interested in the early stages of the wine, or the final stages of it in barrel, but prior to bottling, I suggest you have a look. It was pretty cool. So
can I just add to that? I've had hours with the winemakers at Xanadu and hours with the winemakers at Leeuwin Estate in terms of oak selection, why, impacts, massive cross-section of barrel producers and oak chars and various things. It is beyond belief what winemakers are now doing as compared to what we've done in the past. I reckon I'm looking forward to seeing this video because I haven't seen it myself yet. That sounds great.
It's brilliant. Yeah. Okay, so the 18, I've just reviewed this for the Wine Companion. Made me very nervous because it's very, very good. I expected that it would be. But for me, this vintage combines everything that we know and love of the Art Series Chardonnay, but it's amplified here. So it's very restrained. It's very, very powerful. There's layers and layers of flavour. I tasted this wine maybe 2 minutes ago while we were still talking. It's all one take, and I can still taste it now. There's, apart from peach and apple and brine, there's also turmeric and saffron, and there's all these really great spices. There's florals. I can taste all of that now, minutes later, and I just think that that's really testament to both the great vintage and the pedigree vineyard Block 20 that this comes from.
Okay, Erin and I often come at these things from very different angles, and we have to because Erin's so good in her field, I can't match it. So I come in from another angle. Erin said before, when she was talking about these wines with her intro, that she was talking about some of these standing on the shoulders of the greats of the past. These are just wonderful wines. These are some of the great wines that we've seen, both reviewed internationally and nationally. When you line these up side by side, the 16, I think, was 99 points from Halliday from memory. He said the 17 was even better. The Companion hasn't reviewed this one yet. Ray Jordan in West Australia gave this one 99 plus and said it was his best Australian wine ever. He 98 on this. I thought these were the two great Leeuwin Art Series Chardonnays to date. And then the 18 comes along because we need the context, Erin, in my view.
You need it.
This is better again. So it's got greater length, and then the winemaking, with the benefit of that oak handling that we're just talking about and all that they're learning, this is even finer and longer again. From the moment I tried this with Erin, I felt this was the greatest Chardonnay that Leeuwin had released to date, and I've already said that they've produced 3 of the great 6, 5 of the great 10, and 10 of the great Chardonnays ever made in Australia. And I might add that given that I think that our Sauvignon Blancs, our Rieslings and our Semillons, all of which can be great in their own way, are not quite as great as our greatest Chardonnays, that means that these are the greatest white wines, in my mind, that Australia has made so far with respect.
Okay, not going to argue. They're very good. It's recently gone up to $115 or something, but this is a highly collectible wine. And if you love Chardonnay and you have a cellar, this should be part of it. They age just beautifully, which you'll see in a moment. So moving back in the year, we go to the 2017 vintage. In Margaret River, 17 was cool and wet. Quite cool and quite wet, actually. So the producers that managed their vineyards with courage and care called it a triumphant year. And certainly the Chardonnays from 17 and 19, which we haven't seen yet, but and 17 and 19 are both very, very good Chardonnay years because they're fine, they're delicate, they're nuanced, they're layered. And for the guys that got it right, like Leeuwin, I thought it was just an exceptional wine. This is very pure.
Okay, so context is still important. I've said before, when this came out, Ray Jordan here in the West said it was his greatest Australian wine to date, 99 plus. I gave it 99. From memory, I think James gave it 99. Then the 17 came out. Ray came down a little bit, went back to 98. I had already said, initially I gave them equal points, and I'd already said this was Leeuwin's greatest ever. I then said this matched it. Over the following weeks, I saw it again a few times, next couple of months, I then felt that it became, I felt it was the best Leeuwin Art Series to date, and in my mind, one of the 2 greatest Australian Chardonnays ever made. I think it's a superstar, even if very, very young, and then I said, this came along, and I think it's even better. I reckon this is a star and a great wine. These two are a little bit more placid, a little bit more even, enormous length, brilliant finish, brilliant aftertaste. This one's a little bit more nervous, a little bit more phenolic. Erin said a cooler year, one of the 3 coolest years on record in Margaret River. But Leeuwin obviously handled the vineyards properly, as Erin indicated, which I have no knowledge of. Staggeringly good wine. I love it, and I've loved it effectively since day one. Amongst Australia's greats ever, along with wines like the best of Giaconda, 18, the Penfold Gitana and Benet, and some of the Cullens wines. Great wines.
Agree completely. This 17 is really minerally and pure and fine. And actually, it's the same style, obviously, as the 18, but they have really clear vintage expressions within, and I love that. For that reason, 16 was not my preferred when it was released. I was still on the 15.
Yeah, which I love.
Which we haven't opened because doing more than 6 wines is not viable in a video of this length. But the 15 was a cool year, very low yields, very concentrated, beautiful vintage. And so when the 16 was released, whilst I agreed it was a brilliant wine, it didn't eclipse the 15 for me. The 17 did. But when we looked at this in December, I gave this points that were just below this, that were slightly ahead of this.
Can you just repeat that?
Yes.
So you gave this?
Slightly higher points than this.
Yes.
Slightly lower points than
wow.
this.
Okay, yeah.
Because now, the 2016 at 5 years of age, while still incredibly fresh, is starting to come into itself, I believe. It's a really glassy vintage for Chardonnay. It's really...
Nice word.
Do you think so?
I've never thought about it before. I've never heard that term before. Expresses it perfectly.
Yeah, the acid...
I use the word placid. You said glassy. I love it. Perfect. Yeah.
The acid's very juicy in 16. In the reds, they came across as kind of driven by acid and tannin, in my opinion. But in the Chardonnays, they are juicy and glassy, and I love it. It's an exceptional wine and totally worthy of all of the accolades that it received.
Refined, silky, enormous length, brilliant finish, brilliant aftertaste, seamless. You've got to, as in horses, you've got to follow pedigrees with wines. We know that these are going to live for 30 years easily, with ease, and just get better and better and better. And we'll get onto that in a few minutes. But the 16 at the time, I thought the greatest ever. Wonderful wine, 19.2 at the time from me. Thought it was wonderful. I went up to 19.3 on this. I went up to 19. In fact, I think I went to 19.4 on this. I'm wondering where I go on this because
that's what I mean by nervous.
I've only ever given 19.5 to probably 4 or 5 Australian wines ever, and now I'm saying it's better than this, and I gave this 19.4.
That's that.
Texture, context.
Yeah. A note on these 3 wines. I just shot a video right prior to this on decanting Chardonnays because it's something that I and we do assiduously. And I have included this incredibly beautiful Jancis Robinson Richard Brendan decanter, which I'm loving. But this is the decanter that I used to go back and forth and put these back into bottles. So these are between decanters 3 times and then funneled back into bottle. The 11, 2 and 1 I didn't decant because I think that being in the glass is enough aeration in itself. So just a service point.
On finishing the service point, in our experience, because in our restaurants, and the Lamont Group have 4 restaurants, if any serious wine, whether it's been oaked, so it can be Italy or Spain, or it can be Chardonnay, Pinot, Cabernet, Shiraz, we'll decant back and forwards as Erin's indicated, but we'll pour a control first, then pour back and forwards, then take them both to the table. Customers can't believe it. They can't believe they're the same wine. And invariably, they love the one that's been decanted. Makes such a difference.
Absolutely. So let's move into 2011. For me, so 2011 in the East was a very challenging year. In the West, it was a brilliant year. Don't believe any of the negative discussion around 2011 when you're looking at Western Australian wines from that year because they were very good. If anything, it was on the warmer side, but the quality of the great wines was certainly up there. This wine was significant for James Halliday, correct? The 11?
Certainly the American Wine Spectator.
Sorry. Yes.
So the American
That's
Wine...
why you do the stats.
I was a statistician in the previous life. I can't get rid of it. 2011, the American Wine Spectator rated this at number 5 in their top 100. It also did brilliantly around Australia and the reviews and that sort of stuff. I can't remember whether that specifically got Halliday's Chardonnay of the Year of that year. I think the 12 did, the 14 did, the 17 did, but I can't specifically remember on this one, but it got brilliantly reviewed around the country as being the best of the year by a number of the key players in the wine writing world.
I loved the 11, 13 and 15, so that's not good for my reputation, but they were all the off years and I just think that they had a real kind of edge and finesse about them that I loved. Here, you can really taste the warm kind of sun-drenched fruit in this wine, but it's bolstered by this epic acidity which is endemic to the Gingin clone and also the Block 20 vineyard where it's grown. And I remember very clearly whenever I think about the 11 Art Series Chardonnay, I think about the acid as like a defibrillator for the fruit because it kind of jolts it into life over and over again in the course of drinking the wine, in the course of one sip actually. I love this. It's a bounty of contrasts. It's ripe and it's warm and it's spicy, but it's lean and it's minerally and it's acidic. So for me, this vintage is quite a journey. I feel like it's sort of a complete. It's not the best wine that they've done, but it's like a deeply exciting wine to drink. Do you think?
I'm just sitting here listening to Erin's words, and I love them. A bounty of
contrast.
A bounty of contrast, epic acidity, glassy. The terms, they're never used in our industry, They sum it up exactly. I love the way you describe wines. I'm just sitting here smiling to myself as Erin's giving the words. I'm starting to enjoy this.
Hopefully it makes sense to you, though.
Total.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, it sums it up in a way that we never have before.
Okay, great.
I love what Erin does.
Good.
The 11, so brilliantly brewed at the time. You're talking about that acidity, and I think that brings it with an acid structure as well. So in its earlier days, it had those enormous reviews, internationally and locally, and then as time went by, despite the warmth of the vintage or whatever it is here in Western Australia, I still felt it was more structured and a little bit tighter because of that acidity than some of the other wines. But now I think it's starting to develop, evolve, open. And you and I know, because I mentioned Erin's birth year before, and I shouldn't mention it on this screen. But
I don't care. It's 1986. It's one of the greats.
but it is one of the greats. But we know that Leeuwin Chardonnays age and age. Erin's had many bottles in the last few years, and they age and age and age. This is only just starting to open and evolve now at 10 years of age. And it's just going to be a lovely wine. And it will live for 30 years as well, easily. And a very, very good wine, lovely wine. But in this lineup, I prefer a couple of the others. But still, one of Australia's great Chardies, but there's others better in this lineup.
It's a segue for you into the O2.
Okay. I've got to have the context. The 2001... the American Wine Spectator gave 98 points. If they're talking about Burgundy...
Hold on. They gave 98 points in 2003.
Oh, about that.
That's very high at that time. We've really climbed in points in the last decade, but prior to that, 98 points was unachievable.
Even
almost.
98 points today with a Burgundy, they give more points to Bordeaux, but in Burgundy is just stratospheric. 98 points to that, the highest points they'd ever given to an Australian wine, and I loved it from day one. But we're actually talking about this. The reason I've mentioned the 2001 is because the 2002, which I'm just sitting here loving at the moment, is drinking more towards its best because this is a little bit firmer, a little bit younger. The 2002, I felt at the time, was almost as good. In fact, virtually as good, but it will live a little bit less long. It's starting to develop and showing age now. And these are under screw cap, not under cork. So they... take that into consideration. This is more youthful, more powerful, longer. This is more complete, round, mellow drinking. Total satisfaction. I said to Erin just a couple of seconds ago, I'd love to have this with a meal. Then I said, hang on for a second, hang on. Hold everything. Hold the meal. I'm just going to sit there and drink this on its own because I love that right now. It may not be the greatest one in this lineup, but it's delicious and satisfying drinking right now. Erin will have much better words for that, but that's how I see it.
I was actually just about to pick that up and explain what that means. This, for me, is the most developed of the six, but it's still in beautiful condition. I mean, I poke around in wines. I drink them and I poke around in all the corners and find out if all of the things are in order, if the acid's good, if it's in balance with the fruit, if the fruit is ripe, not too ripe, not underripe, but good, if the oak has been handled well. Like I poke around and try and pick things out to try and work out how good each of those things are. And when everything checks out, I go, okay, what does it taste like? In this case, everything in this wine is still perfect. It hasn't crested the hill yet. It's not over the end. The fruit is ripe, but not too ripe. The oak is, at this point, pretty much imperceptible. The acidity is still there. So all of these things are really great, but it's rounded and it's fleshy and it's there's no like... Usually with Chardonnay, especially Chardonnay made from the Gingin clone, I see it kind of in a comet shape on your palate. So the front is rounded and explodes into shape, and as it streamlines through the finish, it has this tail of flavour. This is much more rounded than that. It's kind of like this, which lingers out into this tadpole, like a tadpole shape, really. This is like, if you think of like tamarind and mandarin and marmalade and grilled peach. There's curry leaf for sure. You know, I bought a curry leaf plant.
No.
It's in my kitchen on the thing because when I drink great Chardonnay, there's a curry leaf character to it and I love it. I picked it up first in Burgundy and then find it occasionally in Australian wine. Leeuwin has it in all of these. But every now and again when I forget what it is like, I just smell one of the leaves out there and I'm like, immediately brought back to space.
She didn't forget what it was like.
So this has got curry leaf in there. It's got briny acidity. It's beautiful. As a segue into the 01.
Before we do, if I can, just very quickly, when I first tried the 75 and 76 Chardonnay Chems, the 76 was delicious and magnificent and fine and fragrant. I'm 72. The 75 was strong, powerful. I thought, oh, when's that going to come around? As the years went by, the delicious, magnificent 100-point 76 gradually tired and aged gracefully and just gradually started to drift away. It's still drinking wonderfully. But in the meantime, the powerful beast of the 75 has just got better and better and better and developed and gained power and seamlessness and strength. And now it's one of my greats of all time of the Chems. And I've had about 400 Chems. It's a little bit like this with these two. This delicious early, now not showing the final staying power of the pedigree of the great 2001.
Yes. That was the segue, because for all of the beauty and the grace and the development and the complexity of the O2, the O1 has got, like, if I look down at the glasses, this is golden and this still has green in it. This has got a minerally kind of undertow to it. It's still, you can see there's still energy and life there. I mean, this has got time to go. This, if you have O2s, I would suggest probably within the next 5 years we'll see them at their best. They'll go for longer than that, but at their best, I believe you should sort of start thinking about drinking them in the next 5 years or so. But this 2000...
Or the next 5 minutes.
Well, that. But the 01... I mean, this. So when we did this great tasting at Leeuwin last year, after the tasting, we have lunch, and they said, if you want any of these for lunch, let us know. And so we had the option of the 18, 17, 16. We looked at the 11. We looked at the 1. We had the 93. We had the 86. There was a lot of them. And I asked for the 01. Do you remember that? Because this wine, for me, there's something about this. I mean, it's totally developed and awesome, but the acid is still saline. There's all this cool kind of Indian spice and market spice, all these exotic sort of characters. There's fruit there. There's heaps of fruit. This is an exciting wine. Like, if we looked at these in a lineup, I would say that the fruit profile of these older wines is more simple than the fruit profile of the younger, more recent wines. And I think that these wines in 20 years' time will be just unbelievable. We'll do the same video again and you will still be here, maybe sitting down, who knows. But, do you know, it will just be exceptional. But even for all of that, this 01 is just a really incredibly beautiful wine. I think we're very fortunate to be able to drink it today.
And also, I mentioned before those other great wines out of Western Australia and from the eastern states, the great Chardonnays, the greatest Chardonnays this country's ever made. The Cullen Legacy Series and the Kevin Johns, the Yatanas, the Binets, the Giacondas, and there are others, they're made in relatively small quantities and specialist quantities. Leeuwin makes significant amounts of these. I retail as well as my wife's family having restaurants and that sort of stuff. And we can take, well, we do actually. We probably take a mixed of, because we can buy the older vintages as well. We take well over 100 dozen a year of Leeuwin Art Series Chardonnays. Anything else I can get 2, 3, 5 dozen of. And this year I got 18 bottles of Kevin John Chardonnay 2019. The quantities of...
Tiny vintage.
Yes, but it's indicative though. And the same with Giaconda. We can get small, tiny quantities. The point is, these guys are putting out significant quantities. Whether it's in the eastern states or here, you can buy them almost year round in whatever quantities you want. And from my point of view, not in every year are Leeuwin the greatest Chardonnay producer in the country, but in more years than anyone else. So Leeuwin, in more years than anyone else, make the greatest Chardonnays in the country. These are great wines. They're just pure satisfaction based on length of flavour, finish and aftertaste, apart from everything else. I reckon these are truly great wines. And as a group, I think, as I've said before, have provided one half of Australia's greatest white wines ever. These are great wines.
Agree. They are. They're so good. They're so good and incredibly consistent. I mean, they're a mirror of the vintage, and you can see the the year and the sunshine and the rain and all those things. You can see it in the glass, but it's not anything other than a beautiful reflection of it, I think. Like, it doesn't really matter which vintage you like or which vintage you choose to collect or if you have all of them. But when you start to look at them side by side like this, you can see sunshine, you can see rain, you can see warmth, you can see everything. You can see it in the glass, and that's part of what makes them beautiful. So
we are so lucky to be able to see these so often.
Oh.
The great wines of the world and Australia.
Quite right.
Erin and I are blessed in this.
Quite right. If you're interested in learning more about the 2018 and all of the nitty-gritty detail that went into that wine, please subscribe, because I will be releasing an interview with me and the two winemakers. It is a deeply detailed interview, but it talks about all of the nitty-gritty that went into this 2018 Chardonnay. In the meantime, John,
I've got the 18.
Good, me too.
Thank you so much. Great to see you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Ciao.